Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the regular meeting of the City of Morgantown Board of Zoning Appeals. Please turn off all cell phones or other devices that may disrupt these proceedings. It is the duty of this board to consider requests for relief from the requirements of the city's zoning regulations, to consider conditional use permit requests, and to hear administrative appeals. The board conducts business in the following order: review, amend, and approve minutes of a previous meeting, then move on to unfinished business and new business, and close the meeting with announcements from staff. Each request is heard in the order that it appears on the agenda. For each conditional use and variance request, the following is done. I will introduce the agenda item, and the Planning Division will present a staff report, which may or may not offer a recommendation. The applicant agent will be asked to present their justification for their request, which may include questions by members of the board. We will then open a public hearing to hear testimony in support of or in opposition to the request. Rules regarding public testimony are as follows. Anyone wishing to testify during the public hearing may do so once recognized by the chair, or may, in lieu of oral testimony, submit written testimony to the chair. All recognized speakers must approach the podium, state their name and address for the record, and speak clearly into the microphone. All comments must be addressed to the board, should be relevant to the application, and may not be of a personal nature or personal attacks. All speakers will be limited to 5 minutes. If members of the board have any questions of the speaker, that time will not be counted toward his or her total of 5 minutes. If there's a large number of speakers, including many who are part of groups or organizations, I may, to avoid repetitive comments, elect to ask for a representative to speak on behalf of the group or organization. Speakers are notified that irrelevant comments or comments of a personal nature or personal attacks may result in the speaker forfeiting his or her opportunity to participate in the proceedings. I may elect to recognize the applicant agent at the end of the public hearing to provide rebuttal or additional comments, which will be limited to an additional 5 minutes. If members of the board have any questions of the applicant agent, that time will not be counted toward her 5 minutes. After all testimony is heard, I will declare the public hearing closed and no further public comment will be permitted. Uncivil, unruly, and/or disruptive behavior at any time during this meeting is prohibited and will result in removal from this public meeting. State law requires the board to consider findings of fact for each conditional use and variance request case. The request cannot be granted unless a majority of the quorum present finds in the positive of all of the findings of fact. The board may elect to continue the hearing to another date if it needs additional information. Applicants and requesting parties will be notified in writing by the Planning Division of the board's findings and conclusions. Regardless of whether a request is approved or denied, decisions of the board can be appealed to the Circuit Court of Monongalia County within 30 days upon receipt of the written notification from the Planning Department. Any work done relating to decisions rendered by this board during that 30-day period is at the sole financial risk of the applicant. Thank you for your consideration and respect for these proceedings and the opinions of all participants. Let's call the roll, I guess. We have a new member. Would you look to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Gabe DeWitt, registered PE here in Morgantown and live up in South Park.
And Mr. Schomberger, you were present, and the chair, Mr. Benison, is present. We have a quorum, stating that for the record. I don't think we have one old business item, but before we move on to that, just to state for the record, we don't have minutes to review, approve, right? They're pending.
Correct.
So we have pending minutes from previous meetings pending. The first agenda item is under the old business heading. This is a request for a renewal for V22-09 and V22-10 Bucklew, 100 East Brockway Avenue. Request for an extension to approve variance expirations per section 1381.05 of the city's planning and zoning code. And I believe you are representing the applicant for those requests.
Correct. I'll just start with the staff report. Briefly, this is variances, when approved, are good for 1 year from the date of the BZA action letter is sent to the applicant petitioner. So they're supposed to start work within that year. In this case, the petitioner has not been able to start the work that is planned and has submitted a timely request to extend an additional 12 months, which is allowed by the code. The code actually allows for multiple extensions of 12 months, so up to 3 or 4 years. So this is within that, and it still does require your approval from the board. But just as a reminder, in this case, the property involves the location of Buck's Bar. It's a very awkward lot, and as such, the owner and petitioner, Mr. Bucklew, submitted a request for variances to setbacks and landscaping, which were granted by the Board of Zoning Appeals on June 15th, 2022. And Mr. Bucklew submitted a request for an extension due to extenuating circumstances tied to concurrent projects and difficulties with the current commercial real estate market. So the staff recommendation takes this into account and acknowledges the challenging environment that landowners face currently, and staff also observes that nothing substantially has changed in the location that would warrant reconsideration of those previous approvals. So considering all these factors, staff didn't find any compelling reason to deny the extension request and therefore recommend that the extension be approved. And that concludes the staff report. I can do my best to answer questions on his behalf. He intended to attend, but had a last-minute conflict and with family wasn't able to be here tonight.
Do we have to find any facts for this, or is it just?
No, this is not a quasi-judicial. It just simply, the adopted code simply states that an extension can be requested and has to be approved by the board. There's no particular criteria that have to be met, so there's no findings by which to address the criteria.
And there haven't been any material or significant changes that would have
No changes, no
prompted a
oppositions.
change in the original findings of
Yeah,
fact.
there's no appeals, so I don't see any reason.
I just have one question. As part of the renewal or extension request process, did you does he still intend to develop it as the hobby garage?
That's still the
That's his
intent. Any
concept.
substantial change would on its own nullify your approval. The approval is based on the project that was proposed and the materials you reviewed. So any substantial changes would be, materially outside of that approval and would require either meeting the code, or if additional issues are found that need to get a variance, he would have to come back. So this doesn't catch all.
With a
It's very
new-
specific to what was approved.
With a new and different application. And then if he does follow through with the hobby garage concept, was there any reminder regarding, and this is referenced on page 4 of 5 of the updated, or this meeting packet, as an important informational item regarding the conditional use approval? Were there any reminders to the applicant regarding?
No, we don't regularly remind past once the letter from the BZA is sent.
So that's not part of the extension request?
Any
process?
conditions and any information in the original approval will continue to apply through the extension. So you're not materially changing anything.
All right,
It's simply just extending what was approved specifically.
right. So then, technically, just to be clear, with regard to this specific case, we won't need a specific motion with regard to approving findings of fact. We just
No,
move
there's
to a
no
motion.
findings. Again, there's no criteria to base the decision on. Somewhat unusual, but
All right,
it's simply a decision to approve or deny the extension request. I would say it's good to give a reason if you wanted to deny it, but
right.
I move that we grant the extension for V 22-09, V 22-10.
Just noting, and it's not subject to any conditions, just
Correct.
because there were no original conditions.
We're just the motion is to extend our approval for 1 year.
Yep.
From date of notification.
Yeah,
Not
today.
today, but date of notification.
Correct.
I second that motion. So we have a motion to grant the requested extension for the referenced cases, and we have a second. All those in favor, or how do we vote? Mr. DeWitt?
Aye. Yes.
Mr. Schaumburger?
Aye.
And I also vote to approve, so notification for granting of the extension will be sent out from planning. And then he's already aware of the 30-day at his sole financial risk.
Yes, I guess the appeal, you could appeal the extension, but I would have to check on that. Technically, it's just an
But
extension. it's not a
but he's
decision.
aware.
Correct.
Okay. All right, under new business, we have case number V 23-06 City Neon, 1050 University Avenue, request by City Neon, Inc. on behalf of Underground Printing for variance relief from Article 1369 of the city's Planning and Zoning Code regarding signage, City Tax District 11, Tax Map 28A, Parcel 27 in the B4 General Business District. Do we have a, oh yeah, that's right, I'm sorry.
Yes, so again, just to introduce myself, sorry, my name's Rodney Bonner. I'm planning staff with the city, so my job is to take in the applications and provide a recommendation to the decision makers, which are our volunteer Board of Zoning Appeals. So this case, this hearing pertains to case V 2306. This is a variance request for signage relief by Underground Printing at 1050 University Avenue. The request is presented by City Neon, and they're seeking variance relief from Article 1369, which regulates signage, and this specific case focuses on the development known as The Deck, which is pretty well known in downtown, a prominent location next to University Avenue and the Sheets. It's a multi-tenant commercial complex. This is for one of the tenants seeking variances to sign face material and illumination standards. They're proposing internal illumination, the use of vinyl lettering, which deviates from code stipulations, mandating wood, metal, natural materials on the sign faces, and which prohibits internal illumination. The street view of the location, like I said, this is a multi-tenant building with multiple tenant locations on the first and second floors. The sign, I believe, is within the size allowance, so there is not a variance to the maximum size. Again, it's just to internal illumination and materials. As you can see, it's a very modest sign. Staff recommends approval and would highlight that the proposed sign aligns with recently approved variances on the deck, and staff believe that the variance will not adversely impact the surrounding aesthetics or downtown area, and will still comply with the zoning regulations intent, and happy to answer any questions. That concludes the staff report.
Do we have a representative? Name and address.
Hello,
Thank
Crystal
you.
Miller from City Neon, 1095 Chaplin Road. So we are representing Underground Printing. They are a local company. It is actually a chain business, but they have local ownership. They have been established here in Morgantown for a while. They were formerly located on Fayette Street, and they are moving locations into the new building there at 1050 University Avenue. Their primary reasons were it's a more customer-friendly area for them. They get a lot more visibility from the University Avenue traffic. Loading for their customers is a lot easier when they're picking up orders, because on Fayette Street they would either block traffic or pull up onto the curb. With the new building, they will have individualized, customized parking for their customers just to load up within the right there in front of the business. So they are seeking illumination of their sign. It is part of the building owner's criteria that each unit have illuminated signage, a raceway mounted chain of letter set. So we tried to keep this as much within the code as we possibly could. I would say it's on the understated side in black and white so that it will blend into the building. This particular space, there's quite a large setback from University Avenue because you have 2 parking spaces on the front of the lot and then next to the building along with the driveway. So you have quite a substantial setback, which is a little bit unique to the downtown area because it's its own complex almost. Whereas downtown, you're right on the street. So the need for visibility is not as much as when you have a larger setback. They do have window graphics on the unit now, which from the street you cannot see the graphics on the window when there are cars in the parking lot. So they would benefit from having a sign on the sign band, which is that brownish gray wood-looking area there in the picture.
The aesthetic of the sign would be consistent with other ones we've approved for this facility, right? Like
I would
the-
say yes, because they're all raceway mounted channel letters, so it's a 3-dimensional aluminum channel letter set. Starbucks has its own branding, obviously. So we stayed with the Underground Printing's logo itself. So it is representative of them, but in the style that is already on the building.
Towards the code, is this something that needs changed in future code updates to allow for vinyl signage in downtown, or does this seem to be the?
I think an update. It's under consider.
It's not directly germane to this discussion, but I think that ultimately the decision would rest with City Council. I think staff would be interested and supportive of revisiting our sign code and looking at, precedents, similar communities, and what we're seeking to achieve through these regulations.
Any questions? Further questions?
I have no further questions.
So it's just illumination and material. And
Correct.
To be honest, I'm surprised they're not requesting an area because of the setback,
Right.
that consideration.
Actually, the property owner gives them the sign allowance, and they have followed the code directly on the size of the sign.
And it's just for the signage on the facade of the building, no accessory for wayfinding immediately adjacent to
there
Don
will be-
Knotts Boulevard
there
at this
will-
time.
Well, there will be tenant panels on the existing monument sign that's in front of the parking lot. It's on the corner, but it would be covered under the variance for the deck when they did the monument.
As the complex considered as a whole. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and open public hearing for case number V23-06, City Neon, 1050 University Avenue. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of or in opposition to this case, now is your opportunity to do so. Seeing no one, we're going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Discussion?
Well, let's go through the findings of fact.
Yes, let's.
Let's let that guide our discussion. So, finding 1, the variance cannot adversely affect the public health, safety, or welfare, or rights of adjacent property owners. What do we?
Well, we have Starbucks to compare
True.
to this, and also Sheets.
This is required by the building, correct? I mean, the building itself requires this signage in this place.
Yeah, so the tenant's following standards and guidelines established by the property owner, but that's in turn subject to our zoning regs.
Yeah.
So,
On a side question, could the property owner itself have requested zoning permission for all of its tenants as part of its guidance?
I suppose it's possible, but yeah, their internal regulations are relevant to the zoning code. But yeah, I mean, I suppose there's a way. It's difficult because variances are supposed to be specific to a project. You're looking at the unique characteristics.
and the
but,
tenants are gonna change.
Yeah.
Even though there's the property owner, there are three, however many separate units there, and the tenants will change through time.
Right, right.
But we agree that finding of fact number 1 is pretty much not going. Do we agree with their statement for finding of fact number 1?
Well, I would say, I mean, so the applicant's asking for a variance with respect to the illumination and the materials. Of the two variances, the illumination relates to public health. The materials, to the best of our knowledge, really doesn't relate. It's the public safety
Aesthetic or-
aspect and the aesthetic, and I guess, I mean, hours of operation, nighttime operation, it's not really relevant to this particular tenant, but it's a relatively small area of illumination that's not really gonna have a material effect on nighttime atmospherics.
Right, it's also under the setback too, so it shouldn't be affecting the tenants above it negatively,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully.
I would agree. So I'd move to accept finding of fact number 1.
Do you want to do well,
I would encourage, for the
As a
sake
group,
of time, you just
all
yes or no
four.
on the findings.
yeah,
We
so let's
move
just,
through them quickly.
let's review the 4 and just decide if we can make a motion in support of or not granting, not accepting the findings of fact. So the second one is, the variance request arises from special conditions or attributes which pertain to this specific property. And it's not a self-created hardship that's referenced in finding of fact number 2. So it's, the business is established in the downtown area and currently has a code compliant sign. They are moving into a location that is more customer friendly. The property owner has very specific criteria for the signage that is to be installed onto the building, onto the facade for this tenant's location. And I would say that even though the property owner, the property owner developed the signage requirements, standards, guidelines, and I would say in the main, generally speaking, the property owner developed sign standards are not at odds with zoning regulations as they bear on signage, at least with regard to the downtown.
Well, the petitioner is also elected to remain as much within code as possible within the standards that they are given.
Right. So are you comfortable with
Yes.
number 2 then? Okay, so moving on to 3. The variance will eliminate any unnecessary hardship and permit a reasonable use of the land and property. The business will be able to install signage that is compliant with the property owner's specific criteria.
So,
And again, I think maybe the property owner has developed the signage standards and guidelines with an eye to self-minimizing hardship as insofar as that hardship may develop out of, an inconsistency with the signage regulations for the downtown and for the city of Morgantown.
I mean, for this fact, I don't see that as the particular hardship that's germane to this. I think that, as the applicant outlined, they identified that there's, there's stickers in the windows, people can't see the business, they want to advertise like they want to be able to advertise like their neighbors. I would strike actually, the hardship being caused by the property owner, and keep, the hardship is wayfinding, and that is specifically wayfinding.
Mm-hmm.
I would think.
Is that,
I would,
The-
so if I may,
Go
I
ahead.
would just propose, I would just strike the whole thing and rewrite it as the variance addresses aesthetic consistency as well as visibility and wayfinding from highly trafficked University Avenue.
mm-hmm,
Okay. And both of these are important.
wayfinding is an important factor there.
So I would be comfortable with that language.
I agree.
So I move to amend finding of fact number 3 to the variance addresses aesthetic consistency and wayfinding from highly trafficked University Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a second?
Well, we're gonna make a motion to accept all of the findings of fact as a,
Don't we have to vote to amend them?
So I would
You
encourage
would-
you to do a one motion for all findings, and you can add to that motion, we
Just-
accept the findings of fact as amended
with respect to finding of fact number 3.
3 and or 4. We haven't gotten to 4 yet, but.
Okay.
Okay, I will withdraw my motion.
Okay, and then the last one is, the variance will allow the intent of the zoning ordinance to be observed and substantial justice done because the business will be able to effectively offer wayfinding after a move. Does your amended finding of fact accommodate?
I would argue it does. I would just
Just
am-
because
amend-
number 4 is referencing wayfinding as an important factor too.
Well, yes, wayfinding seems to be the point of this
Mhm.
one. I would just move that we amend this one to also reflect while meeting the aesthetic consistency of the building instead of the requirements of the property owner. Unless there's an objection.
No.
But meeting the requirements of the property owner is probably still also just as important, is it not? In that, even if they got a variance for whatever it would be, it might not comply with the building owner's specifications.
I personally have a problem with property owners dictating how we should decide things.
Fair, yeah.
I think maintaining aesthetic consistency.
Yeah, because the design standards are still subject to
Code.
zoning regulations as they bear on signage requirements.
Okay.
Do you want to just, okay, so the business will be able to effectively offer wayfinding.
So my
He-
proposed amendment would be.
Yeah, go ahead.
strike meeting the requirements of the property owner and replace it with while maintaining aesthetic consistency.
Right. Or meeting, signage requirements. How about meeting signage requirements as relating to aesthetic considerations?
Sure.
Okay. Okay, so since is everyone comfortable with all of that?
Yeah, that sounds fine.
Since you, Ms. Logan, since you proposed the first amendment relating to finding of fact number 3, why don't you go ahead and make a motion that takes into account your proposed changes to findings of fact number 3 and 4.
Okay. So in the matter of V23-06, I move that we accept findings of fact 1 and 2 as presented by the petitioner. Finding of fact 3 amended to say the variance addresses aesthetic consistency and wayfinding from highly trafficked University Avenue. Finding of fact number 4 amended to say striking the language of while meeting the requirements of the property owner and replacing with while maintaining
Or meeting signage requirements under the zoning code as they relate to aesthetic considerations.
while meeting sign requirements under the zoning code while maintaining aesthetic considerations.
All right, I'll second that motion, and this motion is made in for case number V23-06, City Neon, 1050 University Avenue. So we have a motion, we have a second. How do we vote, Mr.
I approve.
Abe DeWitt? Okay, and Mr. Logan? And I also vote to approve the findings of fact. Having approved those findings of fact, do we have a motion to grant the request? For case number V23-06. I move that we grant the variance request for case number V23-06, City Neon, 1050 University Avenue.
I second.
I third.
Mr. DeWitt, how do you vote?
Yes, approve.
Michelle Martin?
Aye.
And I also vote to grant. So your variance request has been granted. Please advise your client, subject to that, or it can be appealed to the Circuit Court of Montague County, and it is any work that your client does in that 30-day period, he or she does at her own or his own financial risk. Thank you very much for coming down this evening. Take care. All right. Next case is V23-07 DeWitt, 138 King Street. This is a request by Gabe DeWitt for variance relief from section 1331.08 of the city's planning and zoning code regarding accessory structure setbacks. City Tax District 09, Tax Map 41, Parcel 03 in the R1A Single Family Residential District.
Okay, thanks for the introduction.
Thank you.
In this case, the petitioner is seeking permission to construct a garage as an accessory building at the end of an existing driveway. Due to limited space on the property, the proposed garage's adherence to the standard 5-foot setback requirement would practically eliminate usable backyard space and pose vehicular maneuvering challenges. So to address this, the variance of 5 feet from the standard side yard setback is requested. Staff acknowledges the constrained nature of the property and the practical difficulties posed. As you can see in the larger photo, the neighbor's fence kind of comes right up to the driveway. and then you can see that where the vehicle would pull into the garage in the backyard near that large tree. The petitioner has provided some graphics of the proposed structure. So as you can see, if the blue proposed accessory building was flipped into the backyard, you would essentially lose any usable backyard outdoor space. So acknowledging the constrained nature of the property and the practical difficulties posed by adhering to the strict setback regulations, so we recommend, we note that adjusting the garage's position could comply with the regulations, but the requested variance results in a much more functional layout. The neighbor adjacent to the property supports the proposal, and the variance is unlikely to negatively impact neighboring properties or the overall neighborhood vicinity. So given these considerations, staff recommends granting the approval of the requested variance relief as it aligns with the outlined criteria and maintains consistency with the zoning regulations, and staff didn't see a need to modify the petitioner's findings of fact as presented. And that concludes the report.
So is that, so the proposed location of the accessory structure garage is included in that graphic? So the other blue the smaller accessory building, is that extant? Maybe a shed?
It's a stormwater catchment.
Oh, all right, okay, okay. And then, is there anything in the code, minimum distances between primary property structures and accessory property structures? Just to state that for the record.
I don't know offhand, we would have to look at that. I don't know offhand, I can't recall. Let me pull that up.
Okay, all right, yeah. I didn't, when I was reviewing, that didn't occur to me to,
From what I remember reading, it just couldn't be enclosed towards the structure.
okay.
If I closed something, that would negative. I'll have to probably recuse myself from this.
Yeah,
as
maybe you should just, maybe
Wait,
recuse.
are you the
and-
applicant?
I am the applicant.
He is the, yeah.
We can't hear this then.
Yeah, so this is a bit unusual,
Well-
it's not ideal. So we double-checked the bylaws.
Maybe it's best at this point to like physically recuse, like,
Step out.
Yes.
Okay.
I would feel more comfortable with that.
Sounds good.
You can stay, you can still present. Just to clarify what I was saying, this is a bit unusual, obviously, and not ideal, but, so the bylaws state that to have the meeting, or a special or regular meeting, we need a quorum. 3 is our quorum, minimum quorum. Then we go into whether or not you can take action and vote. So the specific language says that the majority of the members present at the meeting, if they vote to approve, it's approved. So
It's still actionable.
it's still actionable tonight. So, and Mr. DeWitt can present, and he would essentially abstain his vote. So it'd be one abstain, and then however you vote
Right.
would determine the outcome. So we can move forward, double-checked on that. Just double-checking distance between principal structure and accessory.
I didn't know about this at all.
So we are able to vote on this tonight.
Correct.
As per we're within it's actionable in accordance with the bylaws.
Okay.
Just to state that for the record.
So we're
It's not, as Mr. Boner,
legal.
it's not ideal circumstances, but we can proceed.
Okay. Do we have a applicant representative?
Well, he's the applicant.
So you can go ahead and present anything that I've missed, and then I can conclude my staff report and just follow up with that question,
Yeah.
if you'd like to, just for the sake of time, to
It-
keep things moving.
If you,
I can answer.
if you would like to, we're waiting on, with respect to the principal versus accessory, like minimum distances required. So we're awaiting that, but in the meantime, yeah, please approach the podium, state your name and address for the record.
Gabe DeWitt, 138 King Street.
Morgantown. Proposing an accessory structure.
Right. And then it's primarily, so it's garage, and then it sounds as if you maybe actively work on vehicles and you want a sheltered space
Yeah.
to do that,
Yes.
which is not unreasonable.
Right. My driveway's slanted along with the road outside my house, so it makes putting a car up on jacks kind of very difficult.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
And then you, I mean, you need, it's really not my business, but I mean, you do want to accommodate a minimum of 2 vehicles.
No, one
Which
vehicle,
account?
I have one vehicle to pull in. That's all that the width of the driveway would allow to pull in and maneuver. The
Oh.
driveway's not very wide.
So it's not 2 stalls then?
It's not 2 stalls. It's just extended so I have room to work and have a
Oh,
workbench. So it's-
laterally.
Yeah, so I have
I see.
doors
All right.
open plus workbench width is how I approximated it.
Okay. Because the description didn't specify.
No.
I was just assuming based on the dimensions that we were looking at a 2-stall
Oh, no, single stall.
garage. Okay. So that really is tight. That really points up the fact that that is really
Yeah, the
confined
original
space.
property was Dan Barry's, the next one up to 21 or 41 dash 2
Uh-huh.
was originally the property owner before it was split, and half was given to him and then apparently sold, not to him directly, but it was originally one larger lot split into 2.
Mhm. So, are there any sections of the code that bear on or specify?
3 feet from, at least 3 feet from the building and,
Between the principal and the accessory. So I think that is that from the footprint, or does that include any like roof
it would
overhangs?
technically include from the accessory building to like a porch or,
Any extending surface of the accessory.
correct.
Okay. So I can't tell. I mean, it probably meets that. Can you speak to that, Mr. DeWitt? Does that, and I don't know compass points, but the roof line that extends closest to your principal structure
Yes,
there?
it meets that. It's a 5-foot setback
So it's-
off the outer
Okay,
corner.
because it looks like it's just comparing it to the 14-foot and
Yeah.
the 28-foot dimensions that you specified.
Right, plan is 5 feet dimension between the house and the structure itself, so there's room to walk and move things.
So we meet that. All right, go ahead.
So there's a fence is that currently on your property line?
Currently on the property line, yeah,
Okay, but that is not your fence, that is your neighbor's fence.
correct, yeah. His was blown over by the recent windstorms earlier in the summer. In the process of putting it back, we discussed redoing all of that work in there.
So
he's-
go on.
He already has a fence that he's constructed because he has a pool, so he has to get that in because of
For security.
security and insurance issues with having a pool. So once that structure goes in, it was at least the plan, if approved, is to either eliminate the fence, lower it, or integrate it into the outside of the structure, so that it matches the aesthetic of what he's going for and whatever I'm also trying to achieve.
So in other words, functionally, your proposed accessory structure and his fence will be like physically integrated.
Pretty much, yes, that is correct.
And for the record, there is correspondence in support from the neighbor
Correct, yes.
in
And his
favor
wife.
of, and I'll just read the letter, to whom this may concern. And the letter's dated, or the signatures are dated, July 9th of this year. We, Matt and Tiffany Dolly, the adjoining property neighbor of Gabe DeWitt, whose proposed structure and variance request will directly affect us, our property, support the proposed accessory building addition to Gabe DeWitt's property. We feel it will add value to both properties along with aiding in the fence rebuild and overall aesthetic of the border between our properties.
So if this fence is going directly up against will it be going up against the wall of the accessory structure?
And then who's, I
Like-
mean, and then also that speaks to who's going to be, have you worked out, and we have to take into consideration future property owners too.
Right.
Is there gonna be, does there have to be some kind of like management agreement? Since to all intents and purposes, I mean, the garage and the, and the fence are gonna be one and the same. Who's responsible
There'll
here?
probably be maybe a 6-inch setback, like, as just in terms of workability, but that's a good question.
And I guess, do you have to pour a pad for this?
I do, yeah.
Okay, so where are you citing the pad?
Pardon? The pad is, you can see it in this,
It's already down?
No, I haven't poured it yet. This is the pad right there. That's the foundation pad.
Okay.
So there's no requirement that they have a maintenance access easement agreement, but you could condition one.
Because I'm just thinking that side of the roof that's on the property line, that is too close.
Runoff issues, maybe?
So I've already covered that with Ken Willis and how to handle that with Bob, and that's what the
Oh, the
catchment is
runoff,
for.
the catchment is
Correct, yes.
for,
Okay.
oh. So is it just a pitched, I mean, is it pitched or is it gonna be hipped, the roof?
It's going to be pitched, probably, likely. That's the intent.
And then, so you're gonna maybe angle the gutters toward the rear of the property and then direct the
Towards
runoff?
one of the external corners, and then have like one of those rock, like a little like a living garden type thing. that
Over
gives
toward
some
the catchment.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So, I mean, it's not gonna be, the runoff is not gonna be running down your whatever
No.
compass point that is. It's not gonna be running down and onto
No.
over the top of your neighbor's fence and into his backyard, or
Correct.
their backyard.
Yeah, it'll be mitigated.
I guess I would like to see, just even in terms of the concrete pad, I'd like to see some kind of setback, even if it's like half a foot.
So
off
the concrete pad actually
You're probably gonna have to do that anyway.
So there's a the concrete pad's going to integrate in with his fence line because of there's not a retained wall. It slopes off right at the corner
Uh-huh.
pretty steeply, and when doing his fence, had to remove a ton of my landscaping timbers in order. So like now that hill is destabilized a little bit, not a lot. It's just a sloping hill, but it just needs. I have got plans to put like essentially a soldier pile system down through there, and then fill that in
Oh.
and create a buttress against his fence essentially.
So your concrete pad protects the stability of both properties.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
And it's going to be
It stabilizes the footing of the.
Yeah. And currently, I have cylinder piles going out every like 2 feet across that section just to keep it from having any rotational moment over the hill. I used to be a geotechnical engineer for a couple of years. So.
Are you gonna have like drainage within the footprint of the?
That is the intent. I have not.
And then just
physically
tie it
designed-
in,
Yeah.
maybe just run it directly to the catchment rather
Yeah.
than back to the.
I'm going to have at the base of the driveway coming down, putting a drain there as well, so that any water coming down the driveway will also go into that catchment, and done the square footage analysis for the size of the catchment.
Yeah.
So if the roof goes bad on the other side, there is no plan for an access easement at this time.
The roof goes bad.
Like if the side of the roof on the property line needs attention.
I was thinking of keeping it as a slab and making it a patio service.
So there is gonna be setback.
Setback from the,
So you can access that trailing roof edge if you need to
service
the
edge.
roof.
Well, the plan is to give it a pitch, and so it all runs towards my property.
All right, I see.
Okay. Do you have any further questions?
I was just gonna have a look at the findings of fact to see if anything jumped off. I mean, when I reviewed it initially, it seemed fairly straightforward.
I,
Do you want to ask for like even like a 2.5 foot setback?
we'll get there. I don't think I have any further questions for him.
Thank you.
No. We need to open a public hearing.
Yeah. All right, we're going to go ahead and open a public hearing for this case. This is just to reference the case number, sorry. This is V 23-07 for DeWitt, 138 King Street. Anyone wishing to speak in support of or in opposition to this case, now is your opportunity to do so. Seeing no one, we're going to close the public hearing. Do you have any further?
Yeah, just a couple of things to add. It sounds like there's concerns about stormwater. Just to clarify, MUB handles stormwater. It's outside of our code, but their criteria for new construction is that stormwater can't be directed off the property onto your neighbor's property, right? So that their review will handle that and those concerns. So, you know, they're justified concerns, but they're a little bit outside of the position of the structure. And there are standards, and there's no proposal to not meet those standards. And then regarding maintenance access, you can certainly condition that if you believe it's worthy of consideration. We've done that before. It's not moving the building, it's just saying that there's a that he would need to seek an agreement with the neighbor to allow access to get to that side of the building that is on the only accessible on that neighbor's property.
Yeah, I'm not comfortable approving this without an access easement.
I think that's reasonable. Could we specify the aerial, the dimensions of the access easement? Just ask. I mean, obviously, he'd have to access it from the front of the neighbor's property, but you have.
No, he wouldn't have to. He could just come around the corner. If there's a gate, I mean, if there's a fence, then yes, he has to. It doesn't
Well, I
have
mean,
to come from the front.
does the neighbor's fence, either if it's extant or intended, is it gonna enclose, run the entire periphery of your neighbor's property?
Yes, and it's got so part of it was to delete the portion that abutted up to my structure, use the external part of my structure as part of this fence, was the intent of that letter.
We can't really grant this until he comes to some agreement with the neighbor, really.
Well, that's what that letter represented, was the intent, so I shared with him these plans, and that was the integration.
We can condition, so wait, what is your concern?
Well, are you asking for an access easement so that Mr. DeWitt can have access to his structure on the neighbor's property? Is that what you're saying?
I'm asking for maintenance. Just, if there is something for future owners, if there is something on that side of the building, someone needs to do some work, there is an agreement that people can use the adjacent property to access that side of the building.
How complicated is that?
It's not complicated. We've done it before. It's standard. I wouldn't get too hung up on it. Just condition a 5 foot wide or whatever you think is reasonable maintenance access easement for the purposes of accessing that lot to maintain the structure.
In terms of
That's easy.
ladders or scaffolding? I mean, scaffolding. Maybe we should say 5 feet.
5 feet.
Yeah, let's go with 5 feet. Okay, so let's go back to the.
Would you be opposed to that condition?
5 feet on.
This is just saying that you would need to have an agreement on your neighbor's deed that says that the owner of your property, you or subsequent heirs or buyers, could access that wall on his property at a minimal. It doesn't mean you can go everywhere on his property. It just
Right.
means like a reasonable 5 foot that you can walk down that fence line and get to your building to paint it,
And to
for
accom-
example.
And to accommodate, like, I mean, it's a single story, but if you needed ladders or maybe scaffolding,
Right.
just to factor that in too.
Well, currently, the house, by the way, the portion that for the opposite side where the garage or the garage structure is proposed, if I
Mhm.
put a ladder on that side, it's on the other man's property, on Dan Barry's
Yeah,
properties. for the-
right.
But it's
That's-
I don't have easy, so is that, so we're saying I would get a letter from.
We're just concerned about the property change, I mean, you have your neighbors
If I
now,
sell,
but
once he
we're
sells,
looking forward
that makes sense.
down
Yeah.
the road.
Yeah, so there are lots of situations in these older neighborhoods where houses were built very close to the property line. I think there was an expectation of neighborly goodwill. So we're not looking at any existing walls, and we're not gonna ask you to get an easement for
Okay,
your
good.
existing
So
house. This is
just
just,
open this up to the other side of my house.
no,
so
no,
we
no,
can get-
yeah, good question. This is just specific to what we're
The
looking at.
accessory
today.
building.
Yep.
Good, cool. So it has to be added to his deed, is the, okay.
And then if the neighbor's not amenable to that, does it void the,
Yeah, well, you would either need to appeal your approval or reapply with a different plan or meet the
Just-
code.
it's a possibility, just to let you know about what's possible.
Okay.
Okay, so,
In terms of findings of fact, finding of fact number one, his argument that the concrete pad will stabilize the hill that both are on, that actually, yeah, I don't have any problems with finding of fact number one.
mhm.
This,
Actually, I have a question for Mr. Bonner. Do we need to, if we're gonna ask for that, the maintenance easement, do we need to make an amendment to one of these findings of fact to
No.
accommodate that? Or we
No.
just can make it,
Just the condition, it'd
just
be
a
on your
condition.
second vote.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry about that. I just wanted to see if we needed to. Okay, so finding of fact number 2.
finding of
It's
fact number
pretty
two
straightforward.
is, it's an old lot, so
Right.
I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the hardship?
The area, the lot size. Does, I mean, not that it's part of the variance request, but does, I mean, it is a small lot. Does it even, just to ask the question, does it, for this residential district, does it meet? Does the lot meet minimum?
No, it does not.
It does not?
We're not making a new lot, so it's.
No, I know that, but just to ask that for the
Yeah,
record.
I,
I was confused when I read the code and I put my square footage of the lot.
So that's the hardship, it's the lot size. And taking that into consideration, this is not an unreasonable request.
Right.
Because it's not, he didn't create the hardship, it's just like, hey, I like this property, it's, X feet by X feet, it is what it is,
So the hardship.
this is my, these are the constraints within which I have to work. It's not unreasonable for someone to want to build an accessory structure.
So in that vein, we strike the language of finding of fact number 3 entirely, and I would say let's say that the size of the lot.
Well, maybe we'll allow the applicant to um, to develop or to just to build an accessory structure.
The size of the lot and the configuration of the lot do not support another location for the structure.
Right.
I think that is a better.
Or the variance will help us to address the physical constraint hardship that is not created by the property owner.
I mean, that's another way to put it, yeah. The variance will eliminate an unnecessary hardship and permit a reasonable use of the land because it will address the size of the lot and the topography that do not permit the accessory structure to be built anywhere else in compliance.
Right. Mitigate. Or the variance will help to mitigate hardship relating to the aerial characteristics of the property not created by the applicant. How about the variance with respect to finding of fact number 3? The variance will help to mitigate, reduce a physical hardship relating to the aerial characteristics of the property not created by the applicant.
Sure.
Okay, let's go with that. Mr. Bonner?
I'm not
that
sure
right?
I follow what you mean by aerial, but
Well, the aerial,
just the lot,
Dimensions
let's call it
of
lot
the lot.
configuration.
yeah, the aerial characteristics of the property.
We could just, but, well, the
Okay.
side, how about just for clarity's sake, the size of the lot and the topography of the land?
Okay, let's go with that.
Okay.
Did you get that? For the update?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, 4.
4, aligns with goals, yada, yada, yada. Encourages compatible land use.
It's not, yeah, the proposed accessory structure, it's not incompatible with
And there are
what's
other,
expected of
and there are other.
neighborhood land uses.
And there are other accessory structures in South Park. This would not be
Mhm.
unreasonable.
Out of the ordinary.
Yeah,
out of
I'm cool with,
unusual.
I'm cool with that. So, I move that in this matter, we accept the findings of fact, for case V 23-07, with the amendment on.
Bearing on finding of fact number 3.
Finding of fact number 3 that finds that the, well,
The variance will help to mitigate or reduce a physical hardship relating to area and topographic characteristics of the property which have not been created by the property owner applicant. And I second that.
all right.
We have 2 board, we'll just state that a majority of the board members, the current board members present are voting. Mr. Schoenberger, how do you vote?
Aye.
In support of, and I also vote in support of, so we've accepted the findings of fact for this case number. Do we have a motion to grant the variance for this case? And I wish it was on, for
So-
case number V 23-07.
So I would move that, we add a condition to our approval of the variance.
Mhm.
Conditioning a 5-foot access easement, on the,
Adjacent to Mr. DeWitt's accessory structure,
Yeah,
but on the neighbor's property.
for 5 feet.
Yep. And so, and that has to be attached to the neighbor's deed.
So condition approval on that 5-foot access easement.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and I second that motion.
All right.
So, roll call vote. Mr. Schomburger, you vote
Aye.
in support of, and I also vote to approve that. So we've granted your request. And now, is there a separate notification to the neighbor bearing on the condition and the easement
No.
access?
No, there's no notification to the neighbor, but the neighbor will have to be involved because they're gonna have to sign the agreement, so they'll be aware.
Okay. All right, and then just to state for the record, so we've granted your variance request for this case. Regardless of whether a request is approved or denied, decisions of the board can be appealed to the Circuit Court of Monongalia County within the 30-day period upon receipt of your written notification from planning. And any work that you do in that 30-day period is at your sole financial risk, as you're very well aware. All right, well, thank you. Come on back. Okay, we're gonna move to the next case. Next one is V 23-08 Levels Arcade, 228 Walnut Street. Request by Levels Arcade and Bar for variance relief from Article 1369 of the city's Planning and Zoning Code regarding signage. City Tax District 11, Tax Map 26A, Parcel 129B4 in the General Business District.
Okay,
Thank you.
this Levels Arcade is seeking variance relief to replace an existing illuminated sign with a smaller, less bright alternative for the newly named and own-managed establishment. The proposed sign primarily uses backlighting, which technically isn't internal illumination. It's a little bit of a gray area. Backlighting is when you have a solid lettering, essentially it's externally illuminating in reverse. The light is not shining through anything, so
Right.
the light is not internal. It's a bit of a gray area. We've recently, if it's a completely backlit sign, have not treated it as internally illuminated. It's externally illuminated. It's a gray area. It could be. You could probably make an argument both ways. Regardless, there is a portion of the sign that is clearly internally illuminated, and that's the text that says arcade plus bar. But the whole sign doesn't meet the materials requirement, so you can just call it a variance for lighting and materials. Current regulations prohibit internal illumination and the vinyl construction. That said, staff would not believe that there would be a negative impact on surroundings, and suggests that the unique environment, which is called out by the applicant, that this location on Walnut is not heavily lit with public street lighting, and there's not as much foot traffic as there are on the primary arterials. So due to that lower pedestrian activity and reduced lighting, that the situation is unique enough to justify considering the variance. And staff recommends granting the approval. No modifications were made to the presented findings of fact.
Thank you. Any questions at this time?
You know how many lumens this light is going to be?
We generally don't get lumens or candlelit light. It's definitely a worthwhile question and something we could look at. Usually signage that's regulated by candle lights at a particular distance. That's not prescribed by the code, so it's not something we seek.
Okay. Do we have a representative for this case? Actually, I have one question for you before we get underway. Does the city have any plans for an upgrade along Walnut Street? Streetscape upgrade? that would be similar to what's underway for Pleasant Street?
I'm not positive.
Don't know.
I haven't been involved in any public works conversations around
All
that.
right. I guess I was just asking, just in terms of like street illumination.
My name is Maxwell Cummins. I live at 1008 Twin Oaks Drive. To speak on that, there is a plan, but they've said that for several years now, so we're still crossing our fingers and hoping.
Right.
Rodney pointed out most of the major points there. The sign is significantly less bright and smaller than the sign that we previously had on there. We went with this style sign because visually it's more appealing to our business and our customers. You can also see that the sign there is behind a tree, one of the only trees on Walnut Street right there. So having a lit up sign definitely helps garner attention.
And it's, I mean, it's flush mounted, right? Just on the facade.
Yes, that's correct. And it is significantly smaller than that one. I think that's about 16 square foot, and the one that we have proposed is 10.
So like two, yeah, okay. 2 by 5.
They're
Might be
either
10 and a half, but-
Similarly
And you,
lit
so you
signs.
wanted to go smaller?
More so because of the dimensions of the logo.
Oh,
So
right.
the dimensions of the logo, since it's more of a horizontal logo, we spaced it out to match the width of the 2 doors. Whereas our previous logo was round, so it just naturally worked out that way.
Was the previous sign lit as well?
Yeah, it was you can see it in the picture here. All of the white that was on that sign was pretty bright.
So is it going to be the same level, or is it moving above the doors? then?
Above the doors.
Okay.
Yeah, it'd be the same level as that sign that's in the picture there. So kind of right in the middle of that second pane of glass.
So it'll
Above
actually
the
be
doors.
within the door itself, like not above the door, but in the door section?
It's above the door.
Above the
Okay.
door, and
Yeah.
in the glass
Mhm.
panels above.
Oh, okay. In the glass panels above the door. I see now. I see it.
So there will be no light leaking into like that upstairs part, right?
No, and the upstairs is unoccupied.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Okay. Discussion, or do you have any?
Public
Public
hearing.
hearing.
Okay, we'll just move to the public hearing then. We're gonna open public hearing for case number V 23-08. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of or in opposition to this case, please do so now. Seeing no one, we're gonna close the public hearing.
So, looking at finding a fact number 1. Neighboring businesses also have internally illuminated sign. I mean, we approved this, well, the old one, right? That was a year ago.
Was it? Can you speak
Yes,
to
I
that,
believe
Mr.
that's
Bonner?
correct. Yep.
Yeah,
I don't have
I mean,
those.
it's not inconsistent with cases in the vicinity.
And it wasn't, that particular sign, at least from my observation, wasn't a nuisance.
And technically, this isn't, as Mr. Bonner stated, there's a gray area. It's not a clear-cut example of internal illumination. So.
I guess, yeah,
illumination
I would, just to expand on that, it's probably the least obtrusive of what could be, you could construe it as internal illumination.
Right.
But it's essentially creating using the letter to create a shadow, so.
Yeah.
Indirect lighting.
So in terms of like the visual atmospherics and those impacts, it's modest, minimal.
I think that's what I'm trying to say.
Okay. Um,
Now, it's just the external of the lettering that's lit up, not like the image above where it's all lit up. Yeah, got it.
Just to clarify, that is the actual sign on the bottom.
Yeah,
Oh. Oh,
so it's ready to go.
that's.
And it's a smaller, I mean, they're not asking for an aerial variance, but it's a smaller sign. You know, aerially it's smaller. It's a smaller sign, so I think it's important to take that into consideration too. I mean, I think it's consistent with, it's not inconsistent with other cases that, or what the applicant is asking for, it's not anything out of the ordinary as compared to other cases that we've considered and granted approvals for other cases in the downtown. So,
And
and I don't, I mean, the findings of fact, they're straightforward, so I'm just gonna make a motion to accept the findings of fact. Unless we have further questions.
I do not.
I accept.
So, well, we need a second.
Oh, a second.
Yeah, on the motion to accept.
Yeah, I said I second.
Oh, you did? Okay. Okay, so, Mr. DeWitt, how do you vote?
I vote
To
approve.
accept?
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Schaumburger, yes?
Approve.
All right, and I also vote to approve the findings of fact. We need a motion to grant the variance requested for V 23-08.
I motion to approve the variance. Is that how we do?
All right,
Second.
and we have a motion to grant the variance for V 23-08. We have a second. Mr. DeWitt, how do you vote?
I vote to approve.
Mr. Schaumburger?
Approve.
And I also vote to approve. So we've granted your variance for your case. As with all other cases, keep in mind, regardless of whether a request is approved or denied, decisions of the board can be appealed to the Circuit Court of Mon County. And there's a 30-day window, and any work that you undertake in that appeal or potential appeal period is at your sole financial risk. And there will be written notification. Generally, it's within 7 days from planning. So you're all set. Thank you very much. Okay, so the last case that we have is V 23-09 Riley, 610 Jefferson Street. Request by Jarrett Riley for variance relief from section 1335.04 of the city's planning and zoning code regarding principal structure setbacks, city tax district 09, tax map 37, parcel 358, in the R1A single-family residential district.
All right, yeah, this variance request involves a principal structure setback. This property is located actually just down the hill from the King Street variance for the accessory building, and is actually within the R1A zone, but it does abut R1 at the rear of the lot. The applicant intends to remodel a single-family dwelling, which includes enclosing an existing open but covered side porch. The proposed alteration breaches the mandated 5-foot minimum side yard setback for principal structures in the R1A district. So the applicant is seeking a variance of about 4 feet, so it's just under plus or minus a foot from the property line. Similarly to the earlier case, this is another older, small city lot. So considering the property's layout constraints, the applicant is aiming to utilize the existing porch footprint. This approach minimizes changes to the overall structure and aligns with the property's current structural alignment and situation. The proposed encroachment impacts only a small portion of that side setback without further expanding the porch's footprint towards the property line. So given the property's layout and limitations, staff acknowledges the practicality of using the existing front porch footprint and would see that this approach appears to work within the property's confines while enhancing its functionality. Staff recommends approving the variance request, and under a condition that the proposed enclosure does not extend further towards the side yard property line. No modifications were made to the applicant's presented findings of fact.
Thank you. Do we have a representative for this case?
Jared Riley, 610 Jefferson Street. I think Rodney kind of captured everything that was in there, so open to questions.
So how does the existing porch not already give it precedence to do, you asking to go further than your existing porch, or to just build on top of the existing footprint?
The existing footprint, just going to add walls.
Okay, so it's
Yeah.
enclosed, it becomes part of the principal structure.
Yeah.
So technically, porches are allowed to, unenclosed porches can go into the setback area a little bit. What this is doing is taking it from a porch, which was probably built well before this standard even existed, and it's enclosing that. It's creating a permanent building space. So we're applying the principal structure, because now it's going from an open air,
It's
covered
making
area to an enclosed.
more truly a part of the principal structure. It's changing the nature of the function or use of the space.
Yeah.
And so you want to convert it, it's being converted to what?
Okay, so it's being enclosed to become a
Just
small
a
bathroom.
A small bathroom, just to state that for the record. Okay.
Yeah.
And then in terms of like, it occurred to me, what are you doing with regard to electric service and the plumbing?
Yeah, so all the utilities.
And can you, just in terms of the setback, do you see that being any considerations there?
No, all the, so the electric utility will come from internally in the structure,
Okay.
and the same with the water and the sewer, it all tie into the utilities are in the basement.
So you're gonna route, just to state for the record, the plumbing is gonna be routed as expeditiously more toward the center of the principal structure, and you're not,
Exactly, yeah, that's where the tie-ins
if you
would be.
understand me, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, nothing will be involved with, the external area.
What's the hardship?
The hardship associated with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think what we're trying to do is maximize the property's functionality. So there's only one bathroom in the home, and it's on the second floor. And so when we have like elderly visitors or just guests, it's challenging to accommodate.
Mhm. And it's not possible, just as a possible other option,
Yeah.
building out bathroom space in the core of the first floor,
Yeah, it's
in
not.
some other area within the first floor.
We consider that. This is just kind of the option that requires the least amount of deconstruction of the property. So if we were to build it into another area, we'd have to kind of deconstruct.
Like load-bearing walls, you'd have to take into, on the first floor,
Yeah, exactly.
and build around the load-bearing walls.
Yeah. So it's a home from the 1920s, so the actual internal footprint, there's not of, the rooms are pretty small.
You'd be reducing already reduced livable space.
Yeah, exactly. And we considered building it into the backyard, but that
Off
would
the
be,
rear.
yeah, that would be you'd have to deconstruct
What-
sections
Doesn't
of
the
kitchen.
property slope
Yes,
slope
significantly.
away?
Yeah, it's about a
down?
12-foot drop.
So you'd have
from-
to,
Yeah.
in terms of excavating down for footers and then building up off of those.
Substantial cost difference. What's the neighbor feel about it?
They're fine with it. Yeah, I've talked to them about it.
I guess in terms of fencing, there might be complications, like if your neighbor changed and they wanted to erect a fence somewhere there, that might be a complication there.
Yeah, well, there's already a fence in their backyard. that spans, that's like right on the property line.
To the rear of their building,
To the rear of
their
building.
house.
Yeah, and there was also.
Well, I just meant along,
Yeah.
you know, the length of the side lot.
Mhm.
How far is the distance between the exterior wall to the edge of the property at the present?
So it's about, it's under a foot.
Is it that close? Oh.
Yeah, and that's how it was originally built. I don't know if the property was
So
split
the
at some
property
point.
line isn't where it's like bermed there? That berm there, is that the property line?
So it's so a foot off of the edge of that, you see where
That.
the actual porch is, the banister, so a foot
Right.
off of that.
So that runs into the same clearance issue with maintaining the exterior wall.
Right. Well, we'll just go with the condition. Or not.
But I guess this one also has a drainage issue component too, because if you do that, you will be, well, I guess it's already handled by the existing roof that's on there.
Yeah, it just drains
So,
into
okay.
the backyard. That's where all the gutters go now.
Does that
Are there
change-
gutter, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, does that change from a porch to now that he's a part of the principal structure?
Good question. I don't think so, because technically it's a roofed, it's already got a roof.
It's already got a
So
roof.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the.
Runoff's already,
But I'm getting outside my silo a little, so I'm not.
oh, that's
So-
right, it's mud, right? That's-
Correct, that'll be Mub's issue.
It's not, I mean, the enclosure, to me, it's not, since you're not building out, you're just enclosing, it's not, to me, it's not expanding the degree of nonconformity.
Mhm.
It's
And
really,
all-
the question is, it's changing the use function.
And on that line, just with regard to maintenance access, so today, if nothing happened, this porch would still exist, and the neighbor could, in theory, build a fence on their property line.
Mhm.
So because of that, I understand that you want to be abundantly cautious, but I would say in this situation is a little bit different because the footprint exists,
Uh-huh.
and we're not changing that.
Right.
So I would suggest not burdening the petitioner today with the need to gain private access for his benefit on the neighbor's property,
Mhm.
because the problem that you're trying to solve already exists. And-
Right.
And you're fixing something that's currently.
And even if
That's
the,
good.
right, and even if the neighbor did put up, because of the small size, I mean, you're converting it to, you're making it more a part of your primary structure.
Mhm.
But even if like a future neighbor erected a fence, the problem in terms of servicing would be the facade, facing the neighbor's house. It wouldn't even be the roof, because you could access the roof either from a ladder extending toward the backyard or in the front yard. The problem in terms of the long-term maintenance would be servicing the facade,
Okay.
the enclosing, in my view anyway,
Mhm.
which isn't as difficult as, it's not the same as your garage. It's different because the roof area is so small.
Mhm.
The problem in terms of the maintenance, it's not the roof, it's the siding.
Right.
And it's just that side that faces the neighbor. It's not even the rear facade and front
Mhm.
facade, so to speak. So, I don't know. Thank you.
Okay.
Let's go. Open the public hearing. All right, we're gonna open the public hearing for this case number V23-09. Anyone wishing to speak in support of or in opposition to this case, please do so now. Seeing no one, we're gonna close the public hearing. Okay, so we'll move to the findings of fact. So this, just to state, it's the applicant's asking for a variance, side yard lot variance of plus or minus 5 feet. Do you have any issues with any of the findings of fact?
No.
Does
that's-
the the applicant's, explanation of what's proposed address your concerns about hardship?
I was just asking the question.
Okay.
You were saying?
I was just seconding the idea that having one bathroom is difficult. So you recognize that it does create a hardship
And it,
multi-tenant house.
Even without their, like occupants with mobility issues. I mean, even apart from that, it's, one bathroom for this, because it is a fairly large house. So,
1,800 plus square feet.
if you're gonna maybe just
Just
approach
say it.
and, just enter your name and address into the record, so it's in there.
I'm David Riley, I'm his father, and my sister was just here, and she's 60-some years old, and she had difficulty getting to the bathroom, as well as her husband and other people that have come in my family, come to visit, so there are hardships getting to the second-story bathroom, that's all.
Thank you, yeah. But even apart from that, even if there weren't occupants with mobility issues, I mean, one bathroom for this, because it is a sizable house. It's, the bathroom that you have is, it's doing double duty as it is. So, do we have a motion to accept findings of fact, or Mr. Schaumburg, do you see anything that stands out that might be problematic for you?
no, I don't.
Because I guess if we did insist, well, why not develop bathroom space off the rear? That would increase the degree of nonconformity. This is not doing that. The enclosure, in my view, I just want to note that.
Okay.
This is an increase in the degree of nonconformity. It's more, you're changing the function of that space by enclosing it.
Yeah,
So I'm going to make a motion to accept the findings of fact.
I second it.
Are we voting?
Well, I need a second.
I second.
Oh, did you? Oh, I
Yes,
didn't
I-
hear you. All right. So we have a motion to accept the findings of fact for, case number V23-09. We have a second. How do you vote?
Approve.
Mr. DeWitt, thank you. Mr. Schaumbarger?
Aye.
All right, and I also vote to accept the findings of fact. Do we have a motion to grant the variance for case V23-09?
Okay, I approve. What do I second it?
No,
Well, would
make
you like to make a motion? Why don't you go ahead?
I'll make a
and-
motion.
The newest member will give
Yeah.
you the favor of, go ahead. Okay, so
Okay.
do we have I'll second Mr. DeWitt's motion to grant the variance for case number V2309. And so we have a motion and we have a second. How do we vote, Mr. Schaumbarger?
Aye.
Mr. DeWitt? And I also vote to grant your variance. I just want to state, regardless of whether a request is approved or denied by this board, decisions of the board can be appealed to the Circuit Court of Montague County within 30 days upon receipt of written notification from planning, and that's usually seven days or so. Any work done during this period is at your sole financial risk.
Okay.
Thank you very much for coming down this evening. Have a good night.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, let's just hold just a moment. Yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
Oh, wait, we have.
Oh, yeah, do we have any announcements from staff?
Quick couple, I'm going to help try and arrange a little refresher or introduction to findings and procedure at our next meeting. It looks like we only have one formal agenda item, so we have to meet anyway, and then we can do that. So, but perhaps we can.
Especially since we have a new board member, too.
Two
That'll be
new
good.
board members.
What-
Yeah, that-
And that is going to be on,
I believe September 20th. So
Yep.
It's usually always the third
It's
Wednesday.
on the third Wednesday, okay, I'll be here.
With a few exception. So looking forward to that.
And then, the master,
Yep.
the comprehensive plan.
Chris made it
that's
to our open
moving
house.
right
And there'll be
along.
more opportunities for the comprehensive plan update to get involved. The draft is ready. I don't think it's been actually published online, but once it is, I'll send a link to everyone. So you
And
can take a
copies
look
will
at
go
that.
to the public library.
Yeah, I
I
think
think.
so. So,
So it'll go to planning, there'll be a at the next meeting, it's the review, and then the meeting following that is adoption.
Oh, no, I think there'll be a little bit more public
Comments?
opportunity and public comments.
really?
And
Oh, all
then-
right.
And then, so the formal next process will be a planning commission meeting formally, they will make a recommendation. That might take one meeting or two meetings, depending on how much feedback or how much they want to modify it.
Right.
Maybe more than two meetings, but within one meeting, there will be a formal public hearing, and then they will make a recommendation to council, and then council will have their usual procedure, first reading, second readings, and adoption.
I would
Depending,
want
they
one.
could table it, they could put more
Right.
work into it, or comments, so it could take longer.
Well, in all fairness, given the level of detail that I saw, it deserves multiple readings, really, because there's,
Well, everything is
A
multiple
lot of
readings, so
moving pieces.
that's standard for any.
What is this
ordinance.
comprehensive plan?
So the comprehensive plan is like it's required by state law, it has to be updated every 10 years. And the comprehensive plan is essentially goals and visions for the development of the city. And it includes like policy, sometimes specific actions that need to be taken, prioritization of actions, and then larger goals that are supposed to help guide decisions related to issues in zoning and funding and allocations and priorities and things like that. So.
It's not like some first order 66 type
No,
stuff.
no.
Comprehensive
it's-
plan.
Overall, it's generally an aspirational document that helps guide changes to the zoning, changes to policies and prioritization for like public works projects, funding, all types of things. So it's a living document. It doesn't say stuck in stone. And like I said, it's generally more aspirational, but there can be prescribed actions as well. So.
Cool.
there will have impacts on, quite possibly on zoning regs easily.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's
But-
cool. So it's a progressive document to keep things evolving.
Yeah.
That's a
it
nice
sure-
way to say
It
it.
sure is.
Yep.
So, a lot of good stuff.
This is my last meeting as well. I just accepted another position, so
Oh.
September 5th is my last day.
Oh,
You got me in at the
no.
I got
last
you.
second. Yeah, you got me.
So
Yeah,
it's been a
right.
pleasure. The city's
Oh.
lucky to have you all and your attention. It's been great working with everyone.
Would you accept?
I could talk about it.
Okay, so yeah, right on the meeting minutes. Sorry.
Are those all your announcements?
That's it.
All right. So we don't need a motion to adjourn, but I do make a motion to adjourn. But
Second.
we're gonna,
Second.
we have a second, so all those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
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 Great.
Cool.